On the far side of the Vilas moon, where the sky shimmered with twin auroras and the air smelled of frost and starlight, Lieutenant Mara Lynn stood alone on the observation deck of Outpost Theta. She was tall and slender, with silver eyes that held the quiet depth of old forests and skin the color of pale moonstone. Her long white hair moved slightly in the low-gravity breeze, though there was no real wind, just the hum of the station's outer shields keeping the vacuum at bay. Around her wrist coiled Kalen, her dragon, no bigger than a house cat but dense with muscle and covered in smooth obsidian scales that caught the light like polished glass. His eyes, golden and slitted, watched the stars with the same stillness as his mistress. Mara had served the Galactic Concordance for 12 cycles, most of them spent in deep analysis of xenobiological threats. She had studied hive minds from the Andromeda Rim, dissected the dream logic of the gas giant dwellers, and once spent 3 months decoding the mating calls of the ice whales of Cryos 9. But never once had she been assigned to observe humanity. Humans were new to the Concordance's records, discovered only 7 cycles ago on a small blue-green planet called Terra, tucked away in an unremarkable spiral arm of the galaxy. They were loud, messy, and dangerously creative. The official reports called them unstable, emotionally volatile, and highly unpredictable. Most Concordance officers avoided them entirely. So when the transfer notice appeared on her personal comm panel that morning, Mara had stared at it for a full minute, unmoving. The message was brief, formal, and carried the highest clearance stamp. Lieutenant Mara Lynn, Elthari bloodline, you are hereby reassigned to the newly established Human Division. Effective immediately. Report to Forta Station, Sol System within 3 standard cycles. Your unique perspective is required, no explanation, no reason. Just orders. Kalen uncoiled from her wrist and stretched, his tiny wings flaring once before folding back against his body. He let out a soft chitter, more question than sound. Mara reached down and gently stroked the ridge above his eyes. I do not know, little flame, she said softly. But the Concordance does not send Elthari to study children's nursery rhymes. She returned to her quarters to pack. Her belongings were few. A data slate filled with linguistic archives, a vial of soil from her ancestral grove on Elthar, and a small carved flute made from moon ash wood. As she placed the flute into her travel case, Kalen leapt onto the bed and nudged her hand with his snout. He could sense her unease. Dragons bonded to Elthari were not just pets. They were extensions of the soul, attuned to emotions as clearly as they were to heat and motion. And right now, Mara's calm surface hit a deep current of doubt. Why humans? She had read the fragmented files during her off hours out of curiosity more than duty. Human history was a tangle of contradictions. They built towering cities and then burned them down. They wrote songs about love while waging wars over scraps of land. They sent fragile metal shells into the void just to touch the stars, yet could not stop hurting each other on their own world. And yet, there was something in their art, their stories, even their crude early broadcasts that tugged at her in a way no other species ever had. Once she had watched a human film, grainy, black and white, nearly a century old, about a man who gave his life to save strangers on a sinking ship. She had replayed the final scene 10 times. Kalen had fallen asleep on her lap, but she stayed awake until dawn, wondering what kind of species would honor sacrifice over survival. Now, she was being sent to live among them. The shuttle arrived 2 cycles later. It was small, sleek, and bore the silver and cobalt insignia of the Human Division, a stylized hand clasping a star. Mara stepped aboard with Kalen curled in the crook of her arm. The pilot, a stoic reptilian from the Serpentis clade, gave her a curt nod and sealed the hatch. As the engines fired and Velas Prime shrank behind them, Mara looked out the viewport one last time. The twin auroras faded into the dark. During the journey, she studied everything she could find about Earth. She watched footage of human cities, crowded, noisy, glowing with chaotic energy. She listened to music, a woman singing with a voice like cracked glass, a group of men shouting over drums and strings, a lone piano playing in an empty room. She read poetry, though much of it confused her. One line stuck in her mind. We are all broken, but that's how the light gets in. She did not understand it, but Kalen had purred when she read it aloud. She also reviewed military logs. Humans had only recently achieved spaceflight, Yet they had already fought 3 orbital skirmishes with pirate factions before the Concordance made contact. Their ships were crude, their weapons inefficient, but their tactics were wild, illogical, and often effective. In one battle, a human captain had rammed his own vessel into an enemy cruiser after disabling its shields, shouting something unintelligible over open comms before impact. The Concordance analysts labeled it reckless. Mara wondered if it was something else. Fortis Station came into view on the 3rd day. It hung in orbit around Earth like a silver seed half-built, buzzing with activity. Human ships, small, boxy, painted in bright colors, docked alongside sleek Concordance vessels. Mara saw humans in pressure suits waving at each other through viewports. One ship had a cartoon dog painted on its side. Kalen tilted his head intrigued. The shuttle docked with a soft thud. The hatch opened and cool recycled air rushed in. A human woman stood waiting in the corridor. She was broad-shouldered with short brown hair and a cybernetic arm that gleamed under the station lights. Her uniform bore the same human division insignia, but worn with a looseness that felt foreign to Mara's disciplined upbringing. "Lieutenant Lin?" the woman asked, her voice rough but warm. "I'm Corporal Lila Brooks. Welcome to the zoo." Mara blinked. "The zoo?" Lila grinned. "That's what the Concordance brass calls this place. Said we're like animals in a cage. Too dangerous to let loose, too interesting to ignore." She stepped forward and offered her organic hand. "But don't worry. We bite, but only when provoked." Mara hesitated, then shook it. Human skin was warmer than she expected. "This is Kalen," she said. Kalen lifted his head and let out a low, rumbling chirp. Lila's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't flinch. "He's smaller than the hollows made him look," she said. "Thought he'd be the size of a hover truck." "He is still young," Mara replied. "His fire is not yet full. Good to know. I'd hate to lose my eyebrows on day 1. Lila turned and gestured down the corridor. "Come on. I'll show you to your quarters. You've got about 2 hours before the briefing. And trust me, you'll want to be awake for this one." As they walked, Mara took in the station. It was louder than any Concordance outpost she'd known. Humans laughed in the mess hall, argued over game boards in the rec room, and played music from personal speakers. A child, human no older than 5, ran past them chasing a floating drone, giggling. Mara stopped for a moment, watching. The child tripped, scraped her knee, and immediately burst into tears. A moment later, another human, a man in a technician's jumpsuit, scooped her up, kissed her forehead, and whispered something that made her laugh through her tears. Kalen pressed closer to Mara's chest. She realized her own breath had caught. "You okay?" Lila asked, noticing her pause. "Yes," Mara said quietly. I have never seen a child cry and laugh in the same breath before." Lila smiled, but it was softer now. "Yeah, that's humans for you. We break easy. But we put ourselves back together faster." They reached the quarters, a modest room with a window overlooking Earth. The planet below was a swirl of white clouds and deep blue oceans, dotted with the faint glow of cities at night. Mara had seen images, but this was different. This was real, alive. Kalen leapt onto the windowsill and pressed his snout against the glass, tail twitching. Lila leaned against the doorframe. "So, you ready to meet the species that sings while it bleeds?" Mara looked at Earth, then at Kalen, then at the human woman who spoke in riddles wrapped in truth. She thought of the transfer notice, the lack of explanation, the strange pull she'd felt toward this chaotic, beautiful world. "I do not know what the Concordance expects me to find here," she said, "but I meant to learn something they do not yet understand." Lila nodded as if she'd heard those words before. "Then you're in the right place, Elf. Because we don't make sense, and that's the point." She left, closing the door softly behind her. Mara sat on the edge of the narrow bed, watching Earth turn below. Kalen curled up in her lap, his warmth a steady comfort. Somewhere down there, billions of humans lived, loved, fought, dreamed. And now she was one of them, not by blood, but by choice. The transfer had begun. Mara's first full day on Fortis Station began with the low hum of artificial gravity and the distant clang of maintenance bots in the corridor. She rose before the station lights brightened for morning cycle, her body still tuned to the rhythms of Valus Prime. Kalen stirred on the pillow beside her, stretching his wings with a soft crackle of scales. He blinked up at her, golden eyes sharp with alertness. He knew something was coming. They both did. Lila arrived exactly 10 minutes after the station chime signaled start of shift. She wore a fresh uniform, her cybernetic arm polished to a dull sheen, and carried 2 steaming mugs. She handed one to Mara without a word. The drink was bitter, dark, and smelled like burnt earth. Mara took a cautious sip and nearly coughed. "Coffee?" Lila said with a smirk. "Human fuel. You'll either love it or hate it. No in between." Mara tried again, slower this time. The bitterness lingered, but beneath it was something warm, almost grounding. "It is strong," she said. "That's the point," Lila replied, leaning against the doorframe. "We don't do weak." They walked to the briefing room together. The corridors were busier now. Humans in various uniforms moved with purpose, some laughing, others arguing over data pads. A group of engineers rolled a broken drone on a cart, singing off-key. Mara watched them, fascinated. In concordant stations, silence was valued. Here noise was life. The briefing room was a wide chamber with a circular table and a large holo display in the center. Already seated were 3 other officers, 2 concordance reptilians and 1 human man with a thick beard and tired eyes. He nodded at Lila but said nothing. The reptilians barely glanced up from their screens. Lila took a seat and gestured for Mara to sit beside her. "This is Captain Vance," she said, nodding to the bearded man. "He runs the Human Division's defense wing. Don't let the grump face fool you," he cried during a kid's cartoon last week. Vance shot her a look but didn't deny it. Before anyone could speak further, the holo display flickered to life. A stern-faced concordance elder appeared, his voice echoing through the room. "All stations, priority alert. Rogue drone fleet detected at the edge of Sol system. Signature matches Cathari Collective. Estimated arrival at Fortis orbit in 2 cycles." A murmur ran through the room. The Cathari were not new enemies, but they were dangerous. A separatist faction that had broken from the main concordance decades ago. They believed organic life was flawed and sought to replace it with perfected machine consciousness. They had attacked outposts before, but never this deep into concordance-protected space. "Defensive protocols activated," the elder continued. "All non-essential personnel to shelter. Human Division to standby. You will not engage unless ordered." The transmission ended. Silence fell. Lila stood abruptly. "Like hell we won't engage." Captain Vance rubbed his temples. "Orders are clear, Brooks. Orders won't stop those drones from turning Earth into scrap." She shot back. "And you know it." Mara listened, her mind racing. She had studied the Cathari during her xenobiology training. Their drones were not just machines, they were adaptive. They learned from every encounter, evolving tactics in real time. Standard concordance fire patterns would fail after the first volley. Kaylin, perched on the back of her chair, let out a low, vibrating hum. It was not a sound of fear, but of recognition. Mara turned to him. "What is it, little flame?" He tilted his head toward the holo display, where a replay of the drone formation was now looping. The drones moved in perfect sync, too perfect. But every few seconds one would twitch, shift slightly out of alignment, then snap back. Mara leaned forward. "Play that again, slower." Lila tapped her data pad, slowing the footage. There it was, a flicker in the pattern. Not random, rhythmic, almost biological. "They are not just copying tactics," Mara said slowly. "They are mimicking neural feedback. Human neural feedback." Everyone turned to her. "What are you talking about?" Vance asked. Mara pointed to the screen. "See here." The stagger in the 3rd drone's movement. It matches the firing pattern of a human soldier under stress. And here, the cluster shift resembles how human pilots adjust when fatigued. The Cathari are not just attacking, they are studying. Learning from human behavior. Lila's eyes narrowed. But how would they even have that data? Mara didn't answer. She was already thinking ahead. If the Cathari were modeling themselves after humans, then standard logic would not work. But humans were not logical. They were emotional, erratic, unpredictable. Kaylin suddenly leapt from the chair and landed on the table. He opened his mouth, not to breathe fire, but to emit a deep, subsonic growl. The sound was too low for human ears, but the holo display flickered. The drone simulation stuttered, one unit freezing for a full second before resuming. The room went still. Lila stared at the dragon, then at Mara. "Did he just disrupt their signal?" Mara nodded. "Dragons of my bloodline can produce harmonic frequencies that interfere with artificial cognition. It is why we were once used as living shields against early AI rebellions. Vance stood slowly. So you're saying your dragon can jam them? For a moment, not long, but long enough. Lila looked at Vance. We have a window, small but real. Vance hesitated, then nodded. Fine, but we do this smart. Brooks, you're with Lynn. Take a scout shuttle. Get close, but do not engage directly. We need confirmation. Understood, Lila said, already moving. Mara followed. Kaylin coiled tightly around her forearm. As they walked to the hangar, Lila spoke without looking at her. You really think this will work? I do not know, Mara admitted. But if the Cathari are learning from humans, then perhaps they can be confused by something only a human and a dragon can create. The scout shuttle was small, built for speed over armor. Lila took the pilot seat, her cybernetic fingers dancing over the controls with practiced ease. Mara sat beside her, Kaylin now perched on the console between them, eyes fixed on the viewport. Earth hung below them, calm and unaware. Ahead, the void darkened as the Cathari fleet emerged from warp, a swarm of sleek, black drones, each shaped like a twisted insect, moving in eerie unison. They're hailing us, Lila said, frowning at her screen. Audio only. She opened the channel. A voice came through, cold, synthetic, layered with too many tones. Organics. Surrender your data. Your chaos is inefficient. We will perfect it, Lila scoffed. Yeah, good luck with that. She cut the channel and nudged the shuttle forward. All right, Elf. Time to show them what messy looks like. Mara placed a hand on Kaylin's back. Be ready, little flame. The drones turned as one, weapons charging. Lila dodged the first volley with a sharp bank that pressed them into their seats. Mara gripped the armrest, heart pounding. This was nothing like the simulations. Now, Lila shouted. Mara gave the signal. Kaylin opened his jaws and released a deep, resonant growl. Not loud, but dense with vibration. The sound rippled through space like an invisible wave. On the view screen, the drone formation shuddered. 3 units veered off course, colliding mid-flight. The rest paused as if confused. It worked, Lila breathed, but only for a moment. The swarm reformed faster this time. One drone broke off and fired a tracking pulse. Alarms blared in the cockpit. Hold on, Lila yelled, yanking the controls hard to port. The shuttle spun narrowly, avoiding a plasma burst. Mara's head slammed against the headrest. Kaylin hissed, scales flaring. They're adapting, Mara said. Faster than I expected. Of course they are, Lila snapped. They're learning from us while we're flying. She pulled up a map of the Sol system. We need to lead them somewhere they can't adapt. Somewhere human. Mara understood. Earth, Lila nodded. If they want to study us, let's show them the real thing. She punched in coordinates and engaged the thrusters. The shuttle shot toward the planet, the drone swarm close behind. As they entered the upper atmosphere, turbulence shook the vessel. Lila fought the controls, teeth gritted. This is going to get rough. Mara closed her eyes, focusing. She reached out with her mind, not to Kaylin, but to the memory of human broadcasts. The music, the laughter, the crying child from the corridor. She thought of the poem. We are all broken, but that's how the light gets in. Kaylin sensed her intent. He climbed onto her shoulder and pressed his forehead to her temple. A bond older than words below them. Earth grew larger, cities glowing, oceans shimmering, clouds swirling in chaotic beauty. The drones followed. Relentless. But as they crossed into the lower atmosphere, something changed. Human satellites pinged them. Air traffic control sent automated warnings. A commercial airliner blared its proximity alarm. A weather drone released a burst of harmless chaff. A child on a rooftop pointed and shouted to her brother. The Cathari swarm faltered. Too much input. Too much noise. Too much life. Their perfect logic could not process the randomness, the sheer overwhelming humanity of it all. One drone spiraled out of control and crashed into the Pacific. Another veered into a satellite and exploded in a silent flash. Lila grinned. They don't know what to do with us, do they? Mara watched the chaos unfold on the screen. The drones were still dangerous, still deadly. But for the first time, they were uncertain, and uncertainty was a human trait. Kaylin let out another low hum. This one softer, almost like a lullaby. Lila guided the shuttle toward a safe landing zone in Colorado. As they descended, she glanced at Mara. You were right. They're not just machines. They're trying to understand us. The morning after the drone skirmish, Fortis Station buzzed with tension. Repairs clanged through the corridors, and human engineers moved in tired packs arguing over schematics and burnt-out circuits. Mara sat in the mess hall nursing a second cup of coffee. She was beginning to like the bitterness and watching Lila argue with Captain Vance near the comms board. Kaylin lay curled on the table beside her, pretending to sleep but tracking every movement with half-lidded eyes. They had barely slept. The Cathari drones had retreated beyond lunar orbit, but not before scanning large sections of Earth's surface. Worse, their last transmission had carried a new phrase. "We will harvest the source." No one knew what that meant. But Mara had a feeling. Lila returned, dropping into the seat across from her. Her cybernetic arm sparked slightly at the elbow. "Vance wants us grounded. Says we got lucky." "We did not get lucky," Mara said quietly. "We used what they do not understand," Lila smirked. "Tell that to the brass. They're scared. Humans make them nervous enough. Now there's a machine cult trying to copy us." Before Mara could reply, an alert blared through the station. Red lights pulsed along the walls. All personnel froze. Captain Vance's voice came over the intercom. "All hands emergency briefing. Level Omega. Human Division report to War Room Alpha, now." Mara and Lila exchanged a look. Omega meant planetary threat. The war room was packed. Holomaps of Earth filled the air, dotted with red markers. Vance stood at the center, face grim. "We just lost contact with Denver," he said. "Not just comms, everything. Power grid, satellites, life signs, gone dark in under 3 minutes." A murmur rose. Denver was a major human city, home to nearly 3 million people. Mara stood. "The Cathari are not just scanning. They are harvesting." Vance nodded. "Our recon drones show strange structures rising in the city center. Organic metal hybrids. And there's something else. They're pulling biosignatures. Human neural patterns. On a massive scale." Lila cursed under her breath. "They're farming us." Mara's mind raced. The Cathari did not want to destroy humanity. They wanted to replicate it. To extract the very thing that made humans unpredictable. Their emotions, their dreams, their pain. And turn it into code. But you could not copy a soul. Not truly. "We have to go down there," she said. Vance shook his head. "Too risky. We don't know what's waiting." "I do," Mara replied. "They are not just taking data. They are taking children." Silence fell. Everyone stared at her. "How do you know that?" Lila asked, voice low. Mara looked at Kaylin. The dragon's scales had darkened to deep violet, a sign of distress. Dragons sense life force, especially young life. Since last night he has been agitated. Not by machines. By absence. Like a song cut short. Lila stood slowly. "Then we go. Vance, give us a dropship. Full stealth." Vance hesitated, then nodded. "One shot. If you're not back in 6 hours, we seal the orbit. No exceptions." 2 hours later, Mara and Lila stood in the belly of a cloaked dropship, descending through Earth's atmosphere toward the ruins of Denver. The city below was eerily still. No lights, no movement, only smoke curling from shattered skyscrapers and the low hum of alien machinery. Kaylin sat on Mara's shoulder, eyes narrowed, wings tight against his body. He could feel it too, the wrongness in the air. They landed in a collapsed parking garage on the edge of downtown. The moment they stepped out, the silence pressed in like a weight. Even the wind seemed afraid to blow. Lila checked her rifle. "Stay close. And if I say run, you run." "No heroics," Mara nodded. Kaylin let out a soft chitter of agreement. They moved through the streets like ghosts. Broken cars lined the roads. Storefronts were shattered. But there were no bodies. No signs of struggle. Just emptiness. Then they saw it. A massive structure rising from the center of the city. It looked like a twisted tree made of black metal and pulsing veins of blue light. Tendrils snaked through the buildings, tapping into power lines, water mains, even old subway tunnels. "The hive core," Mara whispered. As they drew closer, Kaylin suddenly tensed. He leapt from her shoulder and darted down an alley, tail raised. Mara and Lila followed, weapons ready. At the end of the alley stood a sealed door, half buried under rubble. It bore the Concordance medical symbol, but scratched over with human graffiti that read, "Help them." "This isn't Cathari," Lila said, running a hand over the door. "This is ours." Mara placed her palm on the surface. "Not ours. Someone else's." Kaylin scratched at the door, then turned to Mara and let out a series of sharp clicks. The Althari signal for danger inside, but life within. Lila pulled a thermal charge from her belt. Stand back. The explosion was small but precise. The door buckled inward, revealing a dark stairwell. Cold air rushed out, carrying the scent of antiseptic and something else. Fear. They descended slowly. The walls were lined with old human tech, monitors, wires, medical charts. But the symbols on the charts were not human. They were concordants. This is a lab, Mara said. A secret one. At the bottom, they found a large chamber. Rows of stasis pods lined the walls, each filled with a soft blue gel. Inside every pod floated a child, human, no older than 10. Wires connected to their temples, drawing out faint pulses of light that traveled up into the ceiling. Mara's breath caught. They are not harvesting the Cathari way. This is concordance tech. Lila's face hardened. Traitors. Kalen moved to the nearest pod. The child inside, a boy with freckles and red hair, twitched in his sleep. Kalen pressed his snout to the glass and let out a low, soothing hum. The boy's eyelids fluttered. He is dreaming, Mara said, awe in her voice. And his dreams. They are strong, full of color, full of hope. She turned to Lila. The Cathari are not the real enemy. They found this place. They are trying to copy what they see, human hope, but they do not understand its source. They think it is data, but it is not. It is choice. It is love. Lila looked at the rows of sleeping children. We have to wake them. Before Mara could respond, alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Heavy footsteps echoed from the stairwell. Cathari hunters. Not drones this time. Tall, armored units with glowing red eyes and clawed limbs. They moved with purpose, drawn by the breach. Lila raised her rifle. Get the kids. I'll hold them off. Mara shook her head. There is no time. But there is another way. She knelt beside Kalen. Little flame, you must sing. Kalen looked up at her, eyes wide. The full resonance was dangerous. It could shatter glass, rupture eardrums, even stop a heart if used carelessly. But it could also awaken. He nodded once. Mara placed her hands on the floor, grounding herself. She closed her eyes and began to hum, an old Elthari lullaby, one her mother had sung to her under the twin moons. Kalen joined her, his voice deeper, richer, vibrating through the stone. The sound grew, filling the chamber. The stasis pods trembled. Cracks appeared in the glass. Above them, the Cathari hunters froze at the doorway, their sensors overwhelmed by the harmonic frequency. Their red eyes flickered. One by one, the pods hissed open. Gel drained away. Children gasped awake. The boy with freckles sat up first. He looked at Kalen, not with fear but wonder. Is that a dragon? Mara helped him down. Yes, and he needs your voice. The boy blinked. My voice? Sing, Mara said gently. Sing anything. He hesitated, then began a shaky rendition of a nursery rhyme. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. The moment the first note left his lips, something changed. The other children stirred. A girl with braids started humming along. Another boy clapped softly. Their voices, weak at first, grew stronger, weaving together in imperfect harmony. Kalen's resonance shifted, matching theirs. The room filled with light, not from machines but from life. The Cathari hunters staggered back, their systems glitching. To them this was noise, chaos. But to Mara it was the most beautiful sound in the galaxy. Lila lowered her rifle, eyes shining. They're not fighting them, she whispered. They're drowning them in humanity. Mara nodded. Hope is not silent. It sings. She gathered the children close. We must go now. They moved as one group, Mara leading, Lila covering the rear, Kalen flying low above them, scanning for threats. The children held hands, some crying, some singing, all clinging to each other. As they reached the surface, the sky was streaked with dawn. The black hive core pulsed angrily, but its tendrils were retracting, confused by the sudden surge of unfiltered human emotion. The dropship hovered nearby, engines idling. Lila ushered the children aboard. Mara was last. She turned for one final look at the ruined city. Then she saw her, the girl. Standing alone near a broken fountain was a small child, no older than 8, wearing a tattered yellow dress. She wasn't crying. She was humming, a soft, wordless tune that made Kalen land beside her instantly. Mara walked over. What is your name? The girl looked up. Her eyes were wide, calm. "Zoe, come with us, Zoe." Zoe nodded and took Mara's hand. As they boarded the ship, she reached up and touched Kalen's snout. The dragon purred, a sound like distant thunder. Above them, the hive core collapsed in on itself, its stolen dreams returning to the wind. Back on Fortis Station, medics swarmed the children. Parents wept as they were reunited with lost sons and daughters. But Zoe stayed close to Mara, her small hand never leaving Kalen's side. Lila found them on the observation deck, watching Earth turn below. "You saved them," she said. Mara shook her head. "They saved themselves. We only gave them a chance to sing." Lila leaned on the railing. "The Concordance is going to want answers." The days after Denver were quiet, but the silence was heavy. Fortis Station moved with careful steps as if afraid to wake something sleeping. The rescued children were safe, reunited with families or placed in temporary care. But Zoe stayed with Mara. She did not speak much, but she hummed, soft melodies that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Kalen never left her side. He would curl around her feet while she slept or let her braid wildflowers, real ones grown in the station's hydroponic garden, into the spines along his neck. Mara spent her time preparing her report. She sat for hours in the data room, compiling evidence from the Denver lab. Concordance tech logs, genetic markers, encrypted files that pointed to a secret project known only as Project Echo. It was not Cathari. It was their own. A faction within the Concordance had been studying humans for years, trying to isolate the source of their emotional resilience. They believed it could be weaponized, turned into a tool to control other species or even to reshape the galaxy in their image. The Cathari had stumbled upon the lab after the project was abandoned, and mistook the children's neural echoes for a new form of intelligence. Now, Mara had to convince the High Council that humanity was not a threat, but a gift. Lila helped her organize the data. "They won't listen," she said one evening, tossing a data pad onto the table. "The Council sees humans as unstable, dangerous. They'll call Denver a fluke." "Then we give them more than a fluke," Mara replied. "We give them proof." She called for a full council hearing. It was granted, though reluctantly. The chamber was vast and cold, carved from asteroid rock and lit by pale blue crystals. The council members sat in high-backed chairs, their faces unreadable. Reptilian, avian, insectoid, representatives of 100 species, all watching Mara with guarded eyes. She stood alone at the center, Kalen coiled at her feet, Zoe holding her hand. Lila stood just outside the chamber doors, arms crossed, ready to step in if needed. Mara began. She spoke not as a soldier, but as a witness. She showed the footage from Denver, the children waking, their voices rising together, the Cathari faltering not from force, but from confusion. She played Zoe's hum, slowed and analyzed, revealing patterns that matched no known language, yet carried emotional signatures stronger than any machine could replicate. "The Cathari did not retreat because they were defeated," Mara said. "They retreated because they could not compute what they saw. Hope is not logic. It is not data. It is a choice made in darkness, and humans make it every day." A reptilian elder leaned forward. "You speak of emotion as if it is strength, but your own records show human history is soaked in blood. Wars, genocide, self-destruction. How is this not a flaw?" Mara did not flinch. "Yes, humans hurt each other, but they also heal. They build hospitals in war zones. They share food with strangers. They write songs for the dead and plant trees they will never see grow. No other species does this at scale. Not out of duty, out of love." She turned to Zoe. "Show them." Zoe stepped forward, small but steady. She closed her eyes and began to hum the same tune she had sung in Denver. It was simple, wordless, pure. Kalen lifted his head and joined her, his resonance blending with her voice. The sound filled the chamber, warm and alive. The crystals in the walls shimmered. One of the avian counselors blinked rapidly as if holding back tears. "This is what the Cathari tried to copy," Mara said softly. "But you cannot copy a heartbeat. You can only feel it." The council was silent for a long time. Then the eldest, a being of woven light and shadow, spoke. "Your evidence is compelling, Lieutenant Lin, but emotion is not strategy. It does not win wars." As if on cue, alarms blared through the station. Red lights flashed. A voice came over the comm, Captain Vance, urgent and sharp. All hands, Cathari fleet incoming. Full assault. They've broken through the outer defenses. Panic rippled through the chamber. Council members rose, shouting orders. But Mara stood still. She looked at Zoe, then at Kaelin. They are not here for war, she said. They are here for the song. Lila burst into the chamber, rifle in hand. We're outgunned. Their numbers are 10 times ours? Mara turned to the council. Give me one chance. One frequency. The elder hesitated, then nodded. Do it. Mara, Lila, and Zoe ran to the comms hub. Engineers scrambled to reroute power. Kaelin leapt onto the main console, claws clicking against metal. Play it across all bands, Mara ordered. Every ship. Every drone. Every speaker on the station, Lila typed furiously. You sure about this? If they adapt. They will not, Mara said. Because this is not a weapon. It is a lullaby. She placed her hand on Zoe's shoulder. Sing for them, little star. Zoe closed her eyes and began to hum. Her voice was small but clear. Kaelin added his resonance, deep and steady. The sound was amplified, sent out through every antenna, every comm channel, every open frequency in the Sol system. Outside, the Cathari fleet surged forward. Thousands of black drones, weapons charged. Formation perfect. Then the song reached them. The lead drones faltered. Their red eyes flickered. One veered off course and collided with another. The swarm stuttered, like a machine choking on a feeling it could not name. On the main screen, Mara watched as the drones began to drift. Not attacking. Not retreating, just listening. They are confused, Lila whispered. It's working. But then from the heart of the fleet, a massive command drone emerged. Larger, darker, pulsing with raw energy. It ignored the song. It locked onto Fortis Station and fired. Shields buckled. Alarms screamed. They have a leader, Lila said. It's not affected. Mara's mind raced. The command unit was shielded, its core isolated from external frequencies. Logic alone would not stop it. Then Zoe tugged her sleeve. He is sad, she said simply. Mara looked at her. Who is? The big one. He wants to understand. But he is alone, Mara understood. The command drone was not just a machine. It was the Cathari hive mind's attempt to feel, to become more than code. And in its loneliness, it had become rigid, cold. We do not fight it, Mara said. We reach it, she turned to Kaelin. You must go to it. Kaelin's eyes widened. Flying into the heart of an enemy fleet was suicide. But Mara knelt and pressed her forehead to his. You are not alone, little flame. And neither is he. Kaelin nodded. He leapt from the console, wings flaring wide. He shot out of the station through an emergency bay, a streak of black against the stars. Lila grabbed Mara's arm. He'll be torn apart. He will sing, Mara said. And that is enough. On the screen, they watched as Kaelin flew straight toward the command drone. Weapons tracked him. Beams lanced out. He dodged, rolled, used his small size to weave through fire. Then he reached it. He did not attack. He hovered before the massive drone, opened his jaws, and sang. Not a roar, but the same lullaby Zoe had hummed. His resonance poured into the drone's sensors, pure and unguarded. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the command drone's red eye dimmed. Its weapons powered down. Slowly, it turned away from the station. One by one, the other drones followed. The fleet broke formation and retreated into the void, not in defeat, but in silence. In the comms hub, no one spoke. Engineers stared at their screens in disbelief. Lila let out a breath she had been holding for minutes. Zoe smiled. He heard us. Mara pulled her close. Yes, and now he knows he is not alone. Back in the council chamber, the elders sat in stunned quiet. The being of light and shadow rose slowly. We have spent centuries seeking order, it said. But perhaps we have been blind to the strength in chaos. Mara bowed her head. Humans are not perfect, but they remind us that to feel is not weakness. It is courage, the elder nodded. The human division will not be dissolved. It will be expanded. And you, Lieutenant Lin, will lead it, not as an observer, but as a bridge. Mara looked at Zoe, who was now asleep in Lila's arms. Kaelin curled protectively around them both. I do not want a title, she said. I only want to listen. And for the first time, the galaxy began to listen too. The Cathari fleet did not return. Their retreat was not a surrender, but a pause. a moment of stillness in a mind that had only known motion. Fortis Station remained on high alert, but the fear that once clung to the walls began to fade. In its place grew something new: trust. Mara stood on the observation deck one evening watching Earth turn below. The planet glowed with the soft light of cities, oceans reflecting starlight like scattered glass. Behind her, the station hummed with life: human laughter, the clatter of shared meals, the distant strum of a guitar in the rec room. Zoe sat on the floor nearby, braiding daisies into Kaylin's spines. The dragon lay still, eyes half closed, purring like a storm held at bay. Lila joined her at the railing, handing her a mug of coffee. "They offered you a promotion today," she said. "Special Envoy of Cross-Species Understanding. Fancy title." Mara took the mug but did not drink. "I said no." Lila raised an eyebrow. "No? You turned down the Council's highest honor?" "It is not what I want," Mara said. "Titles are cages. I do not wish to speak for humans." "I wish to stand with them," Lila smiled. "Then what do you want?" Mara looked down at Zoe, who was now humming as she worked. Kaylin lifted his head and nuzzled her hand. "I want to build something real. Not a division. Not a project. A home." The next morning, Mara submitted a new request to the Council. Not for rank, not for power, but for land. A small patch of earth far from cities where the sky was wide and the wind carried the scent of pine and soil. She asked for permission to establish a new outpost. Not under Concordance command, but as a shared space. Human Eltheri, and any who wished to learn. To everyone's surprise, the Council agreed. Construction began within the week. Humans and Concordance engineers worked side by side, laying foundations not of steel and protocol, but of wood and open doors. They built a main hall with large windows, a garden for growing food and flowers, and a wide field where children could run. Zoe helped design the Dragon Roost, a sheltered ledge on the eastern slope, warmed by the morning sun. Kaylin approved by sleeping there on the first night. Mara moved into a small cabin at the edge of the property. It had no walls of data slates or weapons racks, just a bed, a table, and a window that faced the stars. Zoe stayed with her, not as a rescued child, but as family. Every night she would hum herself to sleep, and Kaylin would curl around the bed like a living blanket. Lila visited often, bringing supplies and stories from the station. She taught Mara how to throw a baseball, how to fry eggs without burning them, and how to laugh at herself when she failed. In return, Mara taught Lila the old Elthari songs, the ones that spoke of rivers, stars, and quiet courage. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch shelling peas, Lila asked, "Do you ever miss Velas?" Mara looked at the mountains in the distance, purple in the late sun. "I miss the silence. But I do not miss the loneliness," Lila nodded. "Yeah, Earth's loud, but it's never empty." Word of the outpost spread. Other humans came, not soldiers, but teachers, artists, farmers. A few Concordance members arrived too, curious, cautious. They watched as human children played with Kaylin, as Mara shared meals with strangers, as Zoe taught a young reptilian how to braid grass into rings. No one gave orders. No one took notes. They simply lived, and in that living something shifted. The Cathari did not attack again. Instead, months later, a single drone appeared at the edge of the solar system. It carried no weapons, only a data crystal. Inside was a simple message translated through layers of code. "We are listening." Mara played it once, then erased it. Some things did not need to be kept. They only needed to be heard. On the day the outpost was declared open, a small ceremony was held. No speeches, no flags, just a shared meal under the open sky. Humans brought bread and stew. Concordance guests offered fruit from distant worlds. Zoe placed a crown of wildflowers on Kaylin's head, and he wore it with solemn pride. Mara stood at the edge of the gathering watching. She saw Lila teaching a group of children how to skip stones across the pond. She saw an old human woman showing a reptilian how to knit. She saw two boys, one human, one avian, racing each other across the field, laughing. This was not peace won by war. It was peace grown from small acts of kindness, from songs sung in the dark, from a dragon who chose to hum instead of burn. Later that night, Mara sat at her desk and opened a blank log file. She titled it simply, "Final Entry." She wrote, "They told me I was being transferred to study humans. They were wrong. I was transferred to remember what it means to feel wonder. And maybe, To be saved by it, she saved the file and closed the screen. Outside, the stars were bright. Kaylin lay on the roof, wings spread to catch the moonlight. Zoe slept soundly, one hand clutching a stuffed rabbit Lila had given her. Mara stepped out onto the porch and breathed in the cool night air. Somewhere in the field, a cricket sang. Far off, a dog barked. And from the main hall, someone began to play a piano. Soft, hesitant, full of heart, she smiled. Below, in the grassy fields of Colorado, a dragon napped in the sun while a little girl braided wildflowers into his spines. And a soldier taught an elf how to throw a baseball. The galaxy watched and for the first time hoped, not because of weapons, not because of orders, but because they had learned that the strongest thing in the universe was not logic, not power, not even time. It was a hand held in the dark. And on Earth, hands were never far apart.